before I was running on autopilot, which tells me I'm not worthy of that. I can't have that. I could never. I don't deserve a happy family. But if you start introducing that when you're meditating, when you've done that physiological side, when your brain waves are lower, when you're more open to suggestibility, you can then go throughout your entire day, perhaps finding evidence and reasons as to why that statement may not be true and that you are actually worthy of what it is that you want. And that's why visualization is such a powerful tool, because visualization, basically you visualize where it is that you want to be. Your brain wants to keep you safe, again, on autopilot. If you start, visualizing a different version of yourself in the future, your brain is more likely to then go there because it doesn't want to go to places that it doesn't know. So you're closing that gap by visualizing as to where you want to be and where you are right now. Hi guys, I'm Nicole Vignola and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Beautiful. Nicole, thank you so much for taking the time. How are you doing this morning?
Yes, I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me. It's actually afternoon here. I'm in Madeira.
Oh, that's right. That's right. How's the weather there? Is it beautiful,
Uh,
gorgeous?
Gorgeous, but it is a little bit cold. 12 degrees is not very cold, but it's Celsius.
Oh, I was
Uh,
going to say 12 degrees is very, where I'm from, 12 degrees is like
yeah, 12
torture.
Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's not freezing, but I'm not used to it. I've been here a
Sure.
year now.
So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because as a neuroscientist, like I've always been fascinated with the hard problem of consciousness, human consciousness, and the subjective experience. So I'm really interested in getting your take on some of the subjects that I dive into. But first, I want to know, how do you, Nicole, experience reality?
How do I experience reality? That's a tough question. Let me have a think, if you don't mind.
Go
There's
ahead.
my brain. I love thinking a lot. I know that sounds really weird when I say that, but and this is why I'm so excited to have this conversation, because I think a lot of people live outwardly in the sense that they're always looking for information outside. Whereas, we have areas of the network, which, I'll get into in a little bit. I won't bombard you with neuroscience just about yet, but there's so much within us, and our subconscious brain is already holding information of all the things we've already experienced, all the memories we have. We just can't always access them all of the time, but that information is still in there. So what happens is your brain creates a database of information, and then your brain can cross-reference that information to come up with solutions. The problem is that sometimes we don't allow ourselves to find that solution within ourselves. We're always kind of looking outwards. And I guess that like doesn't really answer your question about how I experience reality, but my sense of experiencing reality is that I think we need to strike a balance between doing both, living outwardly, gaining information, but then tapping into this sort of higher self information that we have already that we don't really allow ourselves to always tap into.
Yeah, that higher self, right? I feel like that higher self, whatever you want to call that, is always around us, like omnipresent. And to your
Yeah.
point of how we outwardly look for our answers, like we're always searching for the answer in others, in literature, and others' personal stories. But I feel like your higher self is something that you have to experience first person. Like you can't, like I can listen to the way that you describe reality and how you connect with that. However, that's not my experience. So like when I go back and inward and try to have your experiences, they're your experiences, they're not mine. So like if I do have a unique experience to myself, then I just kind of like scoff at it because it's like, oh, well, it's not Nicole's experience. So I guess I must be wrong because she's a scientist and she knows more than me. And the science says that objectively this shouldn't be happening. Like, how do you coach people, right? Like to go inward. I feel like this hits on your book exactly because it's titled Rewire. So rewiring for a reason. I think we're
Yeah.
rewiring programs that we've been programmed with. So how do you teach? Is there protocols that you talk about in the book that help us kind of go within and kind of
Mm.
identify the true self or the higher self?
Absolutely. And I explain a lot of the science as well as to what's going on in the brain. So, I said earlier I elucidated to getting into that, but we have a few networks in the brain, but we've got three major networks. The one is essential executive network that's responsible for executive function, decision making, the network that we're probably in right now. That's outward thinking. And then you've got the default mode network, which is exactly what the word says, default mode of thinking. So what are you thinking about when you're not thinking about anything else? So that's when you start mind wandering. That's where creativity comes from, but also where rumination comes from. So that idling state, how sometimes you're washing the dishes and your mind's just going. Now, you can create that default mode network, whatever you want it to be. It could be a place of wonderful thoughts and memories, daydreaming. I love, this is why I said I love thinking, which sounds really weird when you say it out loud, but I love just thinking about things and sitting. And that's also why I love meditating, because it allows you to tap into this default mode network. Now, the thing is, those two networks work in tandem. When one is off, the other one is on. So you're not pondering about your 9-year-old life right now while you're on this call with me, you're paying attention to my words. So what I found that, is happening is that a lot of people, as I've said, are living outwardly, constantly being distracted, constantly looking for answers elsewhere. And the default mode network, in my opinion, is it's kind of like untapped potential. Because we go so deep with being on social media, being outward all the time, but how deep can you go with yourself, that inner world? And the problem is that a lot of people don't want to confront their own thoughts. That's why they keep themselves busy. That's why they become workaholics. That's why they end up going out for drinks with friends on a Friday night instead of going home. Not that there's anything wrong with any of that, but you kind of get my drift. And that default mode network really is a place that you can rewire to be your friend. It doesn't have to be you against you all of the time. And that's where people sort of fight with themselves all the time. Should I, shouldn't I? Wrong decisions. Don't trust your intuition. I have a whole chapter on intuition and how that's actually your brain making subconscious decisions for you all the time, because your brain is always problem solving. It's one of the reasons why when I want the answer to something, will plant a seed, let it simmer, walk away, and then it comes to me in a light bulb moment, quite literally. I'll be washing the dishes and I'll be like, oh yes, okay, I know what I need to do. Or I let it simmer and it sort of comes to me in a dream, because your brain is physically, again, cross-referencing information for a solution.
Hmm.
And that's what I love about Rewire, is that I've explained all of this. So all of a sudden, it's not just kind of saying why you need to do it. It's actually tapping into these networks where people understand how the brain is working and how you can actually create that place to be a better place. Because a lot of people are afraid of meditating as well. The third network I mentioned, 3, is a salience network that's involved in attention and attaching salience, meaning importance to different things. So, for example, right now, I can see there are things in my periphery, in my background, your background as well, but I'm paying attention to your face, your words, what you're saying, because my brain is saying this is important. And what that means is when we go throughout life, the brain is basically attaching salience to whatever you're saying is important. So if you attach salience to things like, I'm having a bad day, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I don't have the answers, your brain is going to only pay attention to those things. If I say to you, how many black BMWs are there because you have one, you're going to see them everywhere. If I then say to you, how many red BMWs were there, you would have been paying attention to the black ones, so you wouldn't have been able to actually realize how many red ones were in your environment. They're still there. You just didn't pay attention to them.
Mm. Interesting. What about synchronicities then? Signs and numbers. Do you see those?
I do sometimes, but it depends on whether I'm again looking for them. If I've been trained to look at them. If you're somebody that does look for them, even if it's subconsciously, they'll pop up in your life. I don't attach that much importance to them,
Really?
but yeah.
So you're kind of like, what is it? Nietzsche or whatever his name is. He said synchronicities are nothing outside of chance, and that we need to leave God alone and stop saying that they're meaningful. But I think I don't know. So do you think it's the subconscious bringing attention to that? Like, I mean, I'll turn around and look at a clock and see numbers that I repeatedly see throughout the day. So do you think that's the subconscious or what?
I think it's a subconscious. I definitely believe in higher things that we can't explain for sure. Like the great Carl Sagan said, sorry, I need a coffee. He said, somewhere out there, there's something waiting to be known. And I love that because, science explains so much, but there's still so much that we can't explain or we haven't explained yet. So I definitely like the sort of the higher power
Mm. Do you
all
think
around
that,
it.
and I want to make you really uncomfortable right now. Do you think the subconscious is attached to that higher power?
I think it's something more than that. I think it's something deeper within us that we can't really explain. I feel like it's an energy thing, maybe the way that our cells vibrate. We have different frequencies. Your brain has different frequencies. It's on microvolts, of course, but it's still a frequency. We have different brain waves ranging from theta to gamma. So I'm not entirely sure, but I would like to speculate that perhaps it's something deeper than just the subconscious. I feel like
Sure.
it goes to your cells to
Yeah,
some degree.
we're gonna do a lot of speculation, guys. So I don't think this is in our book, but I love to ask scientists these questions because it's I think it's meaningful. I think science and the esoteric at some point need to merge a little bit more, right? I get it, right? There's some things that happen in this world that we can't explain, but I don't think we can dismiss it. It's like, the N1 studies, it's like the subjective experience. That's why I'm so fascinated with how you experience reality because you totally experience reality totally different than I do, right? You see
Absolutely.
things and phenomena totally different than I do. So I love listening to that because again, I'm putting things outwardly, right? Like I'm really listening to your story and then maybe I'm comparing those to my past experiences. But I really want to get back into going within and like understanding the self because the programs, right? And I want to get your take on this. So when we wire our brain, we're going against past programming. Um,
Yes.
who programs us?
Exactly. And that's what my whole book is about. Is your programming really yours? Is it something that you can change? Absolutely. Are you on just trajectory? Because, a lot of people were programmed by their parents, peers, and their surroundings. For some people, that programming is absolutely fine. For some people, that programming is not fine, but they don't mind because it's sent them on a good trajectory. But for other people, it's actually driving them to a place that they don't want to be. People that were told they were not good enough, people that were told they're not sporty, they're not creative, they're not this, they're not that. All of your beliefs then surround this knowledge that you're gaining as a child, and then on top of that, all your confirmation bias is confirming, and reaffirming everything around you. So now you're reassessing your life at just sort of, age 25 plus, and that's the deeper question in my book: is your life yours, and are you happy with it? If you're not, you can change it.
Absolutely. So how do we know what the authentic self is if we've just been running on programs? You know what I mean? Like how do we know truly who we are?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of exercises in there. It's I I I I have a theory, and I think that this is the perfect podcast to perhaps
Yes,
explain.
ma'am. Let's do this.
Again, this is not science-based. This is completely my opinion as a person, a human, not a scientist. There's obviously going to be some scientific bias in there, but we are matter, right? When we die, we go in the ground, we become matter. We then get, transposed, transferred into other things. We then eat food from the ground, and then we're all just regenerated from each other, right? We're all just generated cells, regenerated cells. We're all each other because we're from the past, we're from all the people that came before us and everything around us before us, right? So when we die, and then perhaps now you could be another version of you that has already existed, but in a different format, in a different matter, in a different amalgamation of matter.
Sounds like reincarnation to me.
Yes, but okay, and this is my theory. You know how some people just, no matter what they do, they don't have their life together. They can't really reach that level of self-actualization. They don't know how to tap into that higher self. And then you've got people that it comes naturally to. My theory, this is where my theory comes in, is that you're an older version of yourself when you've reached that level of higher self. And if you're one of those people that I've said that doesn't have their life together, no matter what you do, maybe you're still new to the world. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So
It's like
is
you.
that you or like as Nicole or would it be a different total like avatar completely? Like, you know what I
I
mean?
think I think it's a different avatar, but but to some degree, there's something in there that you still know is you. So like,
The
death really.
awareness, the awareness, or like so that to me sounds like the soul or the higher self has goals for itself, and if it doesn't achieve it in a certain life, it will live its life out fully, right? And then pass away and then reincarnate into a different avatar and then still pursue those goals.
Yeah, and kind of be wiser, if you will.
Be wiser. So, I mean, what do you think your soul's purpose is in this life?
In this life, I mean, I love enjoying life. I try not to take it too seriously. I want to give more than I take. I want to help people to realize their higher selves, to see that it doesn't have to be the way that it is all the time. Things change. I'm a huge believer in change. I don't attach myself to labels like, oh, I've got an attachment, anxious attachment style. I'm this kind of person, because I think that throughout our lives we completely change. And to put yourself in this box to say, oh, I'm an anxious attachment person, you could then go through your whole life reaffirming this belief that that's who you are. But what if you're not in one? I've had anxious attachments in some relationships, but very confident relationships, and avoidant attachments in other relationships. So I think that all of these things are fluid.
Mm,
Yeah.
hmm. It's so interesting. Yeah, I think so. Change. You love change. How have you changed? Like how has your awareness or consciousness evolved? I mean, from the start, right? Like I feel like you have had not an easy path. Just listening to some of your interviews and some of your story, it seems like there have been challenging times. Like how have you evolved?
I mean, I think I went through my biggest transformation when I was around age 26 or 27. I was going out with a guy, he had a cocaine addiction, and he actually ended up dumping me after 3 years. C'est la vie, hey. But that kind of it made me realize that maybe I was the problem. The whole
Really?
time I was focusing on he was the problem, but actually, I should have left. I should have left a week into the relationship, not 3 years down the line, or the first time I got cheated on, or maybe the second time. But and when he came back to do his amendments, the part of the 12-step process, it was funny because by then I actually didn't care. And I put that in inverted commas in the sense that I did care for him. I still have a semi good relationship with him. He's married, he's happy, but there was nothing he could say because I realized that it was me, like his part as well, but my part. I was an enabler. I let it happen. I made excuses, and I took responsibility. And I read Jocko Willink's book, Extreme Ownership.
Mhm.
If you've read it, the
Yeah,
book, the name says it all,
I love
Extreme Ownership.
Jocko. Yeah.
I love him. And I took extreme ownership for my part in that relationship, but my whole life I realized that I had codependency issues because, that's what I observed growing up in my family. So it wasn't, of course it was him. He played his part, but I couldn't blame him for it. I could only blame myself for my part and take responsibility. And I think that's when I had my bigger transformation. And I had that because I started doing yoga. I started meditating. I started going inwards. I started reaching that higher self. I had this meditation in a yoga class once where I could actually feel a second version of me just really looking out for me. Like, it was like like I was hallucinating. The second version of me that was saying, "We've got it. We can do this, Nick. Like it's all gravy." So
So you
yeah,
saw the second version of yourself in your mind's eye.
yeah, it was like this version of me was actually like sitting on my chest because I was lying down, and she was saying, "Everything's gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine." And I think that was kind of like the tipping point for me, where I was like, you know what, I think I've reached that level that everyone's looking for, self-actualization, higher self, whatever. Of course, it's a journey, but it was a completely transformative experience, and I think my teacher at the time was amazing for that because she opened this door to this realm of spirituality, and yeah.
I love that. That's awesome.
It's a bit trippy, but
I feel like it's very similar to what I've been hearing recently of like quantum jumping, where we go into these hypnotic states and we imagine or we connect with that highest version of ourselves, not highest like in the best, but like whatever our like interpretation is of that version of ourselves that is most successful in whatever topic we're trying to achieve, and then have a conversation with that person and then
Mhm.
get tips and guidance from them and then bring it back into or integrate that back into this timeline. I feel like that's a little like a version of that almost.
I didn't know that there was something called quantum jumping. I'm going to go into deep rabbit
Welcome
holes
to
in a
the
minute.
fringe.
But yes, that's exactly it. And when I'm feeling down, when I meditate, and when I need something, I do. I consult that version of me. And maybe it's my subconscious because I know that it's, as I said, problem solving, and I let it simmer, but I know that there's a part of me that looks after me, and it's probably that version you've just mentioned. So I'm going to
Well,
go
we
down
say
it.
it's the subconscious, but like what really is it, right? I mean, you think about the new quantum mechanics and quantum physics and how they're making these discoveries. Like I think it was 2 years ago, the Nobel um, prize winner for physics, proved what is it? Local realism is false. So how does that change like neuroscience, right? Like how does it change science altogether?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know,
It's
you have the answers. Let's go. Um,
yeah, yeah, I don't know, but I think it teaches us that we need to stay open. Of course, we have to provide information based on research and caution of 100%. You can't start spouting, well, take this with a pinch of salt. But it's staying open. I think the best scientists are the ones who know that they don't know everything, and they know that there are things to come, and that's the perfect Dunning-Kruger effect. You go through this, oh, I know everything, reach the peak, then you drop, I don't know anything, and then you're on this wonderful sort of trajectory at a 45-degree angle, going, I know that I don't know everything, but at some point I'll hopefully learn more than I know right now, and I'll just enjoy that journey. And I think that's where I'm at right now. I'm just really, and this is why I'm loving having these conversations, because I don't often go on podcasts like this. So I'm open to it. I love it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The more that I think I know, well, the more that I know, the more that I don't know. I can't remember who said that. Maybe it was Einstein, maybe. Uh, yeah, the more that I know or I think I know, the more that I realize I just don't know. Because like, let's talk about the observer effect, right? Like if things are manifesting or collapsing that potential or probability in the moment that I'm observing it, like, does the brain even exist unless I'm not observing it, right? Or the moon in itself. So when you have that version of you in the story where you're holding this human brain in your hand, does the brain even exist until you hold it or observe it, right?
Yeah. I think what blows my mind is that every single brain is completely different. So no one
Mm.
will ever be able to see what you see. No one will ever be able to experience your reality. You touched on that earlier, and it's a scary and wonderful feeling at the same time. For me, it's a wonderful feeling. I think for a lot of people that sounds scary, to feel so isolated and lonely. And I put that again in inverted commas. I don't think it's a lonely thing at all. I think it's actually truly special that no
Sure.
one will ever know what you actually really mean.
I know, right? And that's the thing too. Like I could say one sentence or we can have this conversation and people are going to hear it totally different. Like people are going to take
Right.
parts of what you said, and like I feel like there's freedom in that because like it should relieve some pressure on you on going into like a conversation with someone knowing that you just show up and be the most authentic version of yourself and they're going to take what they take away from it regardless, like you have no influence on that.
Yeah. What's that saying? We see things as we are, not as they are.
Absolutely. I
Love.
love that. I love that. Wow. What are your thoughts on AI, right? Like the more that we develop AI and some of the technology that's associated with that, I'm sure there's going to be at some point there's going to be a merger between AI and technology in the brain. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts on that?
Well, the first Neuralink chip was actually introduced into a patient a couple of days or weeks ago by what's his name, Elon Musk, and he got to play was it Nintendo Mario Kart with his father for the first time ever, and that was wonderful. So I think there's a naturalistic fallacy to believe that technology is ruining us. But I think like anything, it's how you learn to use it, right? And I think that it can open up doors, opportunities to other things. I don't think people are always saying, oh, we'll be out of work. I don't know. I think we just evolved to be better so that we don't have to do the manual work, so that something else can do it for us, so that we can then maybe, I don't know, do something that helps us reach our higher self. I'm not sure, but
Absolutely. I love that.
I'm not.
Yeah. I think there's going to be like, reading a lot of the futurist texts and literature about what is to come with technology. I feel like there's going to be like an omega point in consciousness to where there is a great merger. Maybe AI takes us to that point of like one, like, I don't know. I have this theory too that there's going to be like this obtainment of like, you know, I don't know, one consciousness almost. I don't know when that's going to happen, but like I feel like there's going to be more development in technologies or practices like through meditation of where like you and I psychically can link up and like, be more in tune with what each other are thinking. And I feel like we evolved from that like at the very beginning. And this is speculation, guys. So I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable here. But I feel like when we evolved, something happened. Maybe it's the what is it, neocortex, the new brain. Maybe something evolved in that to where um, it blocks that, blocks
Okay.
us from having access to like your consciousness and my consciousness, to where like I can clearly um, connect with you and maybe not read your thoughts, but like pick up vibes energetically that I might not like necessarily like right now, if that makes sense.
Our brainwaves do actually synchronize when we have conversations with other people. So
Really?
it's the why you can pick up on someone's bad mood, bad energy, bad vibes, good vibes. You know, you're around a friend that's in a good mood. After a while, you'll start feeling calmer. Our brainwaves actually sync with one another, which is pretty amazing. So we're actually got a little tether between us right now, which is pretty cool to think
But
about.
isn't that, but you're so far away from me right now, right? Like, so how does that connect?
Yeah, I mean, they're not connected through the air. That was more of a metaphorical, hypothetical idea. But your brain waves, I don't know about through screens, I must say, but I have touched on some research that it can happen. But in real life, if you're having a conversation with somebody, your brain waves will be sitting at a particular frequency. There's, I want to just highlight that you're never in one single frequency. You know, people be like, oh, I'm in beta, I'm in alpha when I'm meditating, I'm in theta when I'm sleeping. Different parts of the brain will be in different frequencies at all times. It's very complicated. Brainwaves are very difficult. I've studied EEGs. It's not an easy feat to study, but there is some emerging research and just fun research to show that we can actually sync up. So if we're having a conversation, your brain waves in particular areas, whether it be the medial prefrontal cortex, temporal junction, will be syncing up as we are communicating, which is great.
Has anyone ever found the location of where consciousness originates in the brain?
I'm not entirely sure. I suspect it's actually the me. I know you said the temporal. Did you say the left temporal?
Yeah.
I think I think from what I've read, it's the medial prefrontal cortex. I would imagine that it's not as simple as that. You know, we've steered away from saying the amygdala is your anxiety center. You know, anxiety is perceived in the frontal cortex as well. It's just a communication of network of brain areas. So I would imagine that it's an amalgamation of areas in the brain. Now, there's one area of the brain that I love. It's the insula, which is underrated, hardly ever spoken about. But that is a little pea-sized shaped area in the brain that actually can trigger desire to the point where it can cause affairs. When you think about it, this little piece of the brain that can make you want to be in infidelity, or make you want to get up and change your life, and make you want to completely change it or wreck it. You might wreck it in an affair, like I just said. And I think that there's probably some communication there. I think, of course, the brain communicates with itself all the time, everywhere. There's no, we've steered away again from left brain, right brain. They both communicate, they're both responsible. Creativity and logic reside on both sides of the brain. And this is why it's complicated. But I think with that insula, the frontal cortex, but I think also that default mode network that I was talking about. I think if you think about, again, being outward all the time, you're rewiring your brain in that network. But how much of that default mode network are you wiring? And I
Hmm.
think the more you tap into that, the more untapped potential there is, the more you can wire the default mode network to then reach that higher self. I think it's got to do with the default mode network, which is, it's part of the frontal cortex, it's part of the anterior cingulate cortex, and there's another area which has slipped my mind, but it's got to do with the limbic system.
Sure. The reptilian brain. So I guess my question is like, so people that have out of body experiences where they experience their awareness and consciousness outside the body. So to me, that would say that consciousness doesn't originate in the brain. So have you ever had an out of body?
Well, I think I had that kind of in that meditation,
Hmm.
to
So
some
like your
degree.
awareness was not inside of in your brain, like it was outside of that.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't know how to explain it, but there was almost like two versions, one on the inside, one on the
So you
outside.
could look, so you could see your body laying down.
No, but I could see this other version of me outside of me. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you reach that when you're really deep in that default mode network, and that's why I believe that it's got to do with that. Parts of the frontal cortex as well, but that default mode area that is not nurtured enough. This is my thing. Is this is what I try to get across in the book as well? Is that we don't tap into it enough. It's not nurtured because we're always busy with something, you know.
Hmm.
And I think monks can go, you know, that area is even more active than the central executive network because they go so deep into their sort of meditations.
Have you ever studied a monk's brain before?
I have no, not.
I would love to
Um,
know what that looks like.
yes, me too. There's a neuroscientist called Oliver Sacks. He's actually
Hmm.
spoken about it. He's written a book.
What
So I
type of
highly
brain states do they get into? Do you know?
probably deep theta. I'm not entirely sure, but Oliver Sacks has got that book, and it's called. I'll look it up, and you can link it. It's a great book. You
Sure.
ever read any of his books?
I have not. I have read a lot of Robert Monroe books, though. Have
Yeah,
you read Robert Monroe?
I have not, but Oliver
No.
Sacks I think will be up your street because he taps into that both kind of, you know, obviously he's a neuroscientist, but he was wonderful because he basically with his patients he stopped seeing them in the lab or in the not the lab, sorry, the office. He actually started going to the cinema with them because he was like, I want to get to know them. I'm not going to get to know them while they're lying on my sofa talking to me, while they're sitting across from me on a desk while I'm wearing a white coat. I'm going to get to know them if I go out with them. So he did walks in a park with them, you know, go to the cinema and actually hang out with them properly. So I found that really interesting because he sort of changed the status quo to research.
Sure. That's awesome. I love that. I love that getting to know someone. It's almost like Rogerian like therapy almost like the client-centered therapies where you really you take down that shield as a practitioner and
Mhm.
get to know the person individually. But there's also like subjective therapies that really hit on or highlight the client's own personal subjective experiences, which I really love because, you know, speaking, you know, circling back, like our subjective experience is how we define reality, right? Like all of those programs, all of those experiences, traumas is how we paint the picture. And then
Yes.
what I love about your book is that you can change, which, wow, this could be a hard question, but like, what does the ideal person look like?
Have you read the book?
I have, and I think that this is the key point.
Yes. I mean, I do this exercise in the book, you know, what is your ideal person? And people will start describing this dictionary version of an ideal person. And then I go, okay, well, what are the differences between you and this person? And what are the similarities? And when you ask those questions, people start to realize that actually they're describing a version of themselves, if not already themselves, a version that doesn't need a lot of change. Almost everyone that I've done this exercise with, you know, and I've done this in, you know, corporate environments, grown men going, oh my gosh, penny drop. I can see that penny drop. Wow. I just described me. You know, because everyone thinks that we need to be somebody different. We need to be like that person, like this one. Social media shows us comparison all the time. And then when you really think about it, when you tap into those core values, you start to see that actually you are already the version that you want to be. You just have to maybe change a couple of things to get to that real point where you are the ideal version of yourself.
I love that. I love that. That's why I asked the question. So going back to the programs, right? And so our parents give us these programs. Like I feel like these programs, you know what I mean? Like the way that we interpret reality and why we do certain things and how our belief systems uh, are passed down generation to generation, right?
Yes.
But I feel like there's also manipulation in there. Like I was just watching, I've spoken to this quite a bit on the podcast where like I'm a football fan, right? Like I like watching the NFL.
Yeah.
And after this season, I might not be watching it because I realize how much actual manipulation is in that, right? Like you're watching the Super Bowl and a ton of advertisements of like to be happy, you need to take this pill, you need to eat this food, you need to date this person. Like, and so I'm thinking to myself, how much of our or how much of our programming comes from not just our parents, but like a higher entity almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why you got to be so careful about the media you consume because everything you consume, even subconsciously, is having an effect on you. Now, if your core beliefs are strong, if you know who you are and you're happy in yourself, they're not going to infiltrate as much. You're going to be able to take that on board, brush it off, and realize that it's got nothing to do with you. But if your, you know, state of internal sort of belief is fragile, you're going to get confused. You're going to start sort of attaching yourself to different things in an attempt to make yourself feel better. And that's why it's so important to connect with yourself. And it's one of the reasons why my biggest belief is that A, all of the answers are within you. You need maybe science and knowledge to understand all of this and how to get there. You don't need to take a probiotic every day or a pill or, and buy this and buy that and all of the, consumerism all of the time. Peter Attia, and I don't know if you know him, he's an amazing medical practitioner. I'm pretty sure he's a medical doctor, an MD. He wrote a book, best-selling novel. Again, I can't remember the name now, but he wrote about social connection, sleep, exercise, all the fundamentals of well-being. But because he attached science to them, it's done so well. And again, this is it. It's, social connection. And I don't mean quantity over quality. You can have one friend and still feel connected. You can even be connected to yourself. There's a woman called Emma Sapala. She's a scientist at Stanford, and she basically concluded that you don't actually have to have any friends to feel connected in life. It can be with yourself and with nature, but you have to be connected. Sleep, exercise, nutrition, and then that sort of higher self, meditation, taking care of your brain on a fundamental level where you're switching off from the external world. And we just, again, just constantly always looking for the answers outside. And I think that's what I want to teach, is that the answers are within you. Of course, I know you've just bought a book to teach you that, which is ironic in itself, but yeah.
Well, I think it's, I think it's, again, I think there is importance in listening to other people's
Of course.
stories, but there's
Yes.
also that the power of discernment for yourself, right? And how do you discern? Like when you have meditations or you listen to that inner voice, like how do you discern it from the ego, and how do you know it has your best interest, right?
Yeah. And my biggest thing is I always say it's, all of the supplements, they're all great. They're fine if you need them. Everything on top of that is great. But my biggest question is, can you sit alone with yourself in a room and be okay? Because I think that's fundamentally the biggest driver of longevity, the biggest driver of your mental health, the biggest driver of your overall physical health, because we know the mind controls the body. And I think so many people argue with themselves all the time. Should I, shouldn't I? They don't trust themselves at parties. They don't trust themselves in certain scenarios. And I think it's really about just aligning, whether it be that conscious and subconscious, I don't know exactly what it is, but just really closing that gap so that you are centered with yourself and happy within yourself.
Mm. What's the universe telling you today? Like what's its message to you today? Like if you close
Yeah.
your eyes and listen to that voice, like what is the universe telling you?
Yeah, I've already done this meditation this morning. I've been having a lot of feelings of comparison lately on social media, and fear. The book's coming out, how what's it going to do, how people are going to interpret it. And I've really had to rein in on those practices, my meditation, my sleep, my really looking after myself and switching off from social media. I've actually been deleting Instagram from 6 o'clock until 9 o'clock every day. So that I'm just working hours, I can check it after that. It's not my monkey, not my circus, I want to enjoy time with my family. And it's saying to me that the times that I've done best in my life is when I've really just connected with myself and
Mm,
done things from a place of authenticity, not caring about how it's going to be perceived, because then in turn it gets perceived well anyway. And if it doesn't, that's my authentic me. So if you don't like it, there's so many people in the world, we're never going to completely align with every single body. So getting prepared for the lashback in some ways, but knowing that, I've stayed true to myself is important. So
sure.
yeah.
I love that. So have you created this life for yourself? Have you manifested this success for you? Like did you envision this for yourself? Did you feel it? How did this manifest?
Yeah, I think I always have. It's funny, all the things that I've ever wanted, I've got. And I'm at a point in my life where I want peace now. I obviously want to continue social media and writing, but I love writing. I want to write more books, but I want to live more peacefully. I think my 20s and early, I'm only 32, but very hectic, very like go, 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 setting up this business and life and getting my studies. And I think getting rid of all those self-limiting beliefs and, dealing with the childhood trauma, that now I want to live sort of in my higher self. I suppose that's, cultivate the energy around me. I really am a big believer in sort of helping those around me as well. Like a small example, my sisters she's got a terrible sort of road rage type thing where she's constantly triggered by people around her. And the other day, this guy hooted at her because the traffic light had gone green and she hadn't seen it. And she starts swearing, ah, yeah, I can see it. And she drives off. And I'm like, maybe he was just like, hey, lady, the light's green, instead of going, oh my God, move, lady, the light's green. And just really helping people see different perspectives in life. Kind of like dropping that seed. Could it be different? Could it be that maybe he wasn't angry? He wasn't hooting at you in a passive aggressive way. He was just genuinely trying to help you. And she went, oh, you're right. Maybe he wasn't angry. I was like, maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was having a good day and he was actually smiling. And I
Sure.
think that's like the journey I feel like I've been on lately is helping people see an alternative.
So do you think that's because of your experience as a neuroscientist, or is that because of the meditation and expanding that awareness to be able to kind of see in the moment, like what is happening around you, right?
Yeah, I think both. I think because of the neuroscience, it's really showed me how much of an impact we can have on each other. We can synchronize brainwaves, we can attract the things in our lives. And if you have a filter saying that people are angry drivers all of the time and you're an angry driver, that's how you're going to go throughout your whole life and then reinforce that. So, writing the book really sort of helped me see how much of our belief system drives everything around us. You see things as you are, not as they are. And one of the chapters is called, you've read it. It's I'll see it when I believe it, and that is exactly it. Because you'll only see things that you believe, because your brain will block out all the things that you don't. So it's
Well,
just
wow, that's so fascinating. I don't mean to cut you off, sorry. But like,
no, 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 go.
so how do we manifest, right? I'm a big advocate for conscious manifestation, right? And like I feel like we can because people have told us we can't, right? So I think that's a part of the program. But like if we are
Yeah.
creators, how do we manifest? Like how do we get into those brain states to allow that to flow?
Yeah, again, well, firstly, you need to remove the stress. So physiological sigh is your tool number one to help you come down into a parasympathetic state. You can't reason with a brain that's in a stressful scenario, because if you were faced with a tiger or a lion, your brain's not going to try and reason as to why it's there. It's just going to be concerned with getting away from it. So obviously we have threats in our day-to-day emails all of the time that are not things that we can deal with like a lion or run away from. So it's about really just taking away that stress so that you can reach those levels of parasympathetic activity where you can then be open to change. When you're in a theta, low alpha state, brainwave state, you are more susceptible to change. Now, neuroplasticity happens at all brainwaves, so it's not that you don't when you're in a high frequency. But as an example, in theta brainwaves, you are more open to suggestibility and you're more creative, so you're more open to problem solving. And that's my step number one. And then my step number two is to just you really do attract what you see, what you believe you see. And when I wrote about this again in the book, when we hear bad news, you don't really learn from that. So Tali Sharot, neuroscientist, she basically did this research where she looked at the stock market, and every time the stock market was high, people were logging in, checking it. Oh, wow, amazing! My account's doing great. When the stock market was low, people were burying their heads in the sand, because we don't learn from negative information. We block out what we don't want to see. Okay, so by reintroducing what it is that you want to see, maybe it is, you've gone through your whole life thinking you could never be wealthy, you could never have that, you could never have a happy family, whatever it is that you want. I'm more aligned with manifesting experiences, and then the money comes with it rather than money in itself. But some people attach importance to money more, and that's absolutely fine. But once you start introducing that to yourself in those low brain waves, that's when you can start perhaps seeing your day a little bit different. Okay, before I was running on autopilot, which tells me I'm not worthy of that. I can't have that. I could never. I don't deserve a happy family. But if you start introducing that when you're meditating, when you've done that physiological side, when your brain waves are lower, when you're more open to suggestibility, you can then go throughout your entire day, perhaps finding evidence and reasons as to why that statement may not be true, and that you are actually worthy of what it is that you want, right? And that's why visualization is such a powerful tool, because visualization, basically you visualize where it is that you want to be. Your brain wants to keep you safe, again, on autopilot. If you start, visualizing a different version of yourself in the future, your brain is more likely to then go there because it doesn't want to go to places that it doesn't know, not easily anyway, unless it's forced. So you're closing that gap by visualizing as to where you want to be and where you are right now. And I think that's such a powerful tool.
Absolutely. So what does the brain do? Like when you visualize yourself there, right? Like, does it release chemicals in the body to make you feel like you're there?
Yes, and also it can help start creating new pathways. So, if your brain is a motorway or a highway of pathways that have been deeply ingrained, to go to this new place, there are no pathways. You have to create them. And by visualizing them, you're already sort of integrating this like blueprint, if you will, because you have to then execute. You can't just, visualize it and hope to get there. You have to then put in the steps as well. But now you've got a blueprint, so it's easier for you to get to that point where you know where you want to be.
Sure. I just feel that's a key point there. I feel like it's inspired action almost, right? Like, and not acting. And so for me, it's when I get into this mode of like trying to figure it out, like consciously, like just trying and putting a lot of effort in trying to make something happen, like it just doesn't happen. I feel like
Mm.
it's when I have the inspired action or the intuitive hits to
Mhm.
to do a certain behavior or action. That's when the magic happens, when things start attracting to me, the people start attracting to me that I need to have
Yeah.
in my life to achieve that goal, right? And I don't know what that is, right? Again, speaking to the point of like, the universe and the magic behind that.
Mm.
I mean, what, I don't know if I really want to know the answer. I feel like it takes away from that magic, right?
Yeah. Well, from a neuroscientific perspective, your conscious brain can hold about 90 bits per bit of information, but your subconscious can hold a lot more. We don't really know exactly how more, but for example, your eyes can bring in billions of bits of information at any second. So there's a big divide there. We can't hold that much conscious information all the time. And as I said earlier, your brain still has all these stored memories, templates, ideas, experiences that you're not thinking about all of the time. So when you step away from the problem, when you're consciously trying to solve the problem, you've only got a small pool of information that can help you get there. When you step away from it, that's when your subconscious starts sort of problem solving for you, and that's when you start seeing things through that salience network that I said. It starts, maybe you see something in your environment, you go, oh yes, I've been trying to find the answer to that, tick. And that brings you closer to your goal. Or maybe an email pops in, and that I can't explain, of course, why someone comes into your life that you've manifested. But it's a great thing, because if we look at it from a different perspective, maybe you would have got that email but been so conscious on trying to solve the problem in a different way that you would have been like, oh, this email's not important right now.
Sure.
But when that's just that as an example. So I'm a big believer in letting things happen as they should be. Everything is falling apart according to plan all of the time. And
Absolutely.
if you let
Absolutely.
it, you enjoy the journey, then things happen the way that they need to. And of course, the whole book is putting yourself in the driver's seat. I mean that to a certain degree. Don't let just things happen to you, but there's a balance between kind of aligning yourself so that you can see the answers more clearly, which sounds really woo-woo to somebody who's like, I don't know what that means, but I think you get what I
I
mean.
think you have a safe audience here to say some boo-boo stuff because
Yeah.
I feel like we don't exactly know. I mean, I don't think we as a human being have the capacity to fully understand the universe, right? I think we have tools that help us understand this reality to a certain extent, but to understand like what underlies this reality and what makes it up, I don't feel like we have the capacity. We might think we do. Like there's so many
Mm.
different theories about like simulation hypothesis and virtual reality, which I kind of jive with a little bit. I mean, a lot of the ancient teachers speak to this. Yogananda speaks to this. I think Plato speaks to this, the allegory of the cave, and like, the prisoners are locked up and they're seeing the shadows on the wall and they think it's a reality. However, when they get unlocked and they go and they experience a totally different reality and they understand now what true reality is. So, I mean,
Yeah.
to me, it's kind of like maybe Plato was talking about out of body experiences or who knows. But I feel like if this is, it's so fast. I can't believe I'm going to ask you this. So what are your thoughts on this being a simulation, right? Like, have you ever thought about that?
I do. I always joke and say that it's like we're in a Sims game. Someone's just like pressing Control V and trying to get us to do things. Yeah, I
Well, have
don't
you
know.
seen glitches in the simulation for yourself? I mean, besides the meditation, right? Have you seen other things that happen in your reality that were like, oh, that's kind of odd?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I think about it in terms of like a thought. I do think that we have a lot more control over our lives and ourselves than we think, and that's, a lot of the my belief, and that's transpired into the book, is that you can take control of the driving seat, and to some degree, maybe we don't have, more control, of course. Maybe there is a higher self or power or something that's simulating
Sure.
us.
Well, I want to make
But
this point, right? So I do think there are timelines. I feel like there is something to virtual reality in many worlds that every this decision or choice that we make, a yes or a no, I feel like there's versions of us that split off and live that life. I feel like you have an example of this in your book, or not in your book, but like in your interviews I've heard about, right? Like where you applied for medical school like 10 times or something like that,
yeah,
or 11 times. And then on like the 12th, they like you didn't even apply to medical school and they sent you a decline letter. Yeah.
yeah.
Like, so, I mean, maybe there is a version of yourself out there that applied for the 12th time and you just kind of like crossed timelines with that and received the rejection letter. I don't know. That's just me speculating.
I do have a wild thought that maybe there are parallel versions of us for sure. Simulating in a different antimatter universe, because all matter has an antimatter, and perhaps there is an underworld. Do you watch Stranger Things? Because I love the Upside Down. I think that's
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
maybe there is, like, like I said, an antimatter version of ourselves that Nicole did get into medical school. I don't know, but it's
But
I
it's
think.
interesting to think about, right?
Oh, 100%. I could talk about this. We're going to need another podcast for this, I think. But I think that doing the best with what you have and the control you have over your life is definitely my underlying message, whilst also trusting that, this is the path you're supposed to be on. I think it depends, right? If your life is good, and you're happy to trust, then go for it. But if you're in a bad place, it's like it's almost saying you don't have the power to change this to some degree,
Sure.
maybe not in the
Well,
future.
I think at a certain, it's like almost like Maslow's, um,
Hierarchy of
yeah,
needs.
hierarchy to where like
Yeah,
if you, it depends on where you're at in that hierarchy, to where like
yeah,
if you're at the self-actualization part, like yes, you can start doing these things, but if you're at survival, like there's just no way that you have that mindset of like, oh, yeah, I'm going to create my reality because you're running on that survival program, if that makes sense.
yeah. It's, the different needs. You've got safety needs. No, sorry, physiological needs first. Food, water, safety needs, and then I can't remember, psychological needs, and then that self-actualization. So yeah, you're right, and I agree, and I love that, because as long as those needs are being met, then you can kind of go into that top triangle where you're trusting life and discovering new things. So
Yes, I love that. I feel like we're on the same way. I think maybe we are connecting over
we're on the
energy
same
waves or
page.
mind waves, brain
I love.
waves. Um, yeah, I've totally loved this conversation. How can people connect with you, Nicole? How can they buy the book and how can they maybe send you a message?
Yeah, I'm on Nicole's Neuroscience on Instagram. It's my only account. I've got TikTok, but I've got about 300 followers. I should be more active, but yeah, that's another conversation in itself. But the book Rewire, Break the Cycle, Alter Your Thoughts and Create Lasting Change, you can get it on any bookstore, your nearest bookstore, on the 9th of May in the UK and Europe and surrounding areas. US is on the 4th of June, and it will be available literally everywhere. It's a big contract with HarperCollins and Penguin, so I think it's going to reach far and wide, I hope anyway. So
Big
um,
time, big time. My birthday's on May 10th, so it releases the day
okay,
before my birthday.
I'll remember you.
That's right. Sending you positive vibes. You know who else is born on May 10th? Wayne Dyer.
Okay, nice.
That's
I
good
didn't
company, right? You don't know who Wayne Dyer is? Oh my
Wayne.
goodness gracious. Oh my. People send her messages. Let her know who
Okay,
Wayne Dyer
yes,
is.
I know. I do know who Wayne Dyer is. My bad. listened to a few of his YouTube videos, which is great.
Still, though, everybody listening to this, send her your best Wayne
Yes,
Dyer interview or YouTube
100.
inspiration for sure.
Thank you.
Nicole, this has been fascinating. This has been lovely to connect with you. I can't thank you enough for taking the time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. I love pushing the pushing the boundaries a little bit sometimes.